Hello everyone and welcome back to another tutorial. Today we're painting a autumn landscape meets winter. Now, as always, the materials are going to be in the description below, so be sure to check that out. I will provide as many of the links as I can find and you should be able to get them. If not, then I can answer questions if there's any alternative items that you might need to find. Watercolors today, I'll be using deep light watercolors and Holbein watercolors as well, 3 of them. So 5 colors in total for this landscape. Now the first thing that I do is I spray my acrylic board and then I spray the back of my Arches cold press watercolor paper. This is going to act like glue and seal that paper to my acrylic board. It's a really great way to have your paper lay flat and stay flat. But of course, if you want to tape your paper, then by all means, go ahead and tape your paper. The first step I'm doing is wetting the areas where I want my paint to diffuse and become soft for my sky. But I am leaving areas that are dry, so when I brush over it, you're going to get a little bit of these hard lines from where the wet area meets the dry, so you can see that right here. And I'll slowly build up my paint and have the darker paint meet that dry area, because if you ever look at a natural sky, you will see some hard lines, and so that's what I'm after. Now I am using, I believe it's Davies Gray by Holbein. I'll have the correct color in the description because I can't think of it at the moment, but it's a really beautiful, cool, bluer toned gray. I have not seen a color like this before. I love it. It's really an easy color for skies. Now, of course, if you haven't already, be sure to like and subscribe. I'd love for you to stick around if you are new here. Now you can see that I am just using the side of my brush and just moving it back and forth. I have no particular way of doing it, just creating some dimension. Now the deep light watercolors I am using is gold ochre and raw sienna. Now, these are handmade pigments and they're earth pigments. So there's lots of texture, there's some granulation. Some of the paints will have different bits and pieces in them. They're absolutely beautiful. I do want to be transparent that I am a brand ambassador for deep light watercolors. They were looking for an ambassador a few months ago and I felt such a connection with them. I reached out and thought maybe I could join the team. So really grateful to be a part of their mission in their homemade watercolors, and they're just beautiful. I love it. They love nature. They're aesthetic. Anyway, if you check them out, you will see what I mean. Now, I do have a discount code, Deep Jackie, if you want 10% off. They are expensive. I know they're not cheap. They are a treat. So if you can get your hands on 1 or 2, what better time than the holidays being around the corner. But anyway, I go ahead and alternate between the 2 colors, bringing in some warmth and some darker areas just to give a little bit more contrast, a little bit more definition. And I freehand everything. I very rarely sketch anything in my paintings. I like the freedom to paint outside the lines. I just kind of go where, I don't want to say where my heart takes me. Sounds very cheesy. I just end up, just figuring out how I feel or how the painting feels. So in this case, I started to make some shapes and then I started to see a path forming. So you can see in the very bottom left-hand corner, I'll start to form this path that works its way up to the right-hand side. So that's what I decided to go with, and as I start figuring that out, I will add darker colors to, or in this case, just the darker shade, which is the raw sienna compared to the gold ochre, and I'll start forming some shadows to really give some definition in the structure of that path, for instance. So that's what I continue to do. Now my paper is still wet. It's not soaking or anything, but it's definitely wet. And now I'm dropping in the burnt umber. Again, this is by Holbein Watercolors. And if you haven't tried Holbein Watercolors, they're awesome. I really love their colors. They are fairly new to me. But anyway, I really like this hue, and it works beautifully with these other two colors. So I go ahead and make the bottom part of the paper darker, and then I gradually start fading the land up as it meets the horizon, because I do vision having some mist in there. Now, if you want to lift any paint out like I just did here, all you need to do is dip your brush in water and dab it off on a paper towel, getting most of the moisture out of your brush. And then if you just go right back over the area you want to remove the paint, you should be able to lift the paint nicely. Now, your paper does need to be pretty wet or damp for this to work easily. Now I am using a palette knife here to scrape out rocks. I have done this in several videos. It's my favorite way to paint rocks in a landscape fairly quickly. It's very organic, you get really fun shapes, and I just think it's a beautiful way to get some of those very jaggedy rock formations. You can always paint them in and paint around your rocks, or whatever you want to do, but I love this. Now I prefer a palette knife because I am more skilled, if you will, with a palette knife. I'm not very good at using a card because I just don't have much practice, and I personally do find that there's a different way to do it. I don't know how to explain it. Maybe you know what I'm talking about. If you have tips, then I'd love to know. Honestly, it probably just boils down to me sitting down and really playing with a card. But I have my palette knife and I just love it. So it's been a good investment. Now I want to bring a little bit more life back to my rocks, so I add some shadow. And this is great because it's going to break up those rocks and it's going to make them pop even more. And what I like to do is add those tiny details to really make things pop and bring some life back into my painting. Especially when you scrape away your rocks, you can lose some life. So whatever's left on my brush, I just go ahead and scrub it on that white area to bring in lots of little dots and lines and just some organic shapes that you would naturally see in a rock outside. And of course, you can go back and add some more definition under your rocks or between your rocks to create some shadows. It's really up to you what you want to do. The possibilities are endless. And also adding in some grassy areas. Now I have very little paint on my brush and some more water because the paint is quite translucent, but I wanted to balance some more washed out grasses, and then I'll later add in some darker grasses and some frozen grasses. And I just go ahead and add them between the rocks. But you really could have these grassy bits throughout the whole base of the painting, and I absolutely would love to have done that, but that would have been a bit too long for the video. So now I'm forming my mountain, and the colors I'm using are just a combination of Payne's Gray and Burnt Umber. It's a bit cooler, which means I have used a bit more of the Payne's Gray to my mixture. I am using the tip of my brush to get the fine lines of the mountain, whether I want to extend it or add little bits on top, which you'll see me do. And then I balance that with using the belly of my brush by getting more of the land part of the mountain and moving it down. So I use both. This is why I absolutely love using long rounds, because they have a big belly and then they have a very fine tip of the brush. Now you can get a bunch of brushes for different techniques, but I love an all-in-one brush, and this is my number one brush for landscapes. even if they are massive. So if I paint a 16 by 20, I'm using this brush. I love it. Now it's pretty ruined as far as being frayed, but I think it's beautiful. So I'm able to get lots of different textures with this brush because it's ruined. So, but anyway, fair warning, I'm pretty rough on my brushes. Now, if you dip your brush in water, and you go ahead and take your brush and meet it with the base of that mountain, you'll be able to pull some of that paint down and create some mist. If you find that you have blooms or cauliflowers back into the paint, go ahead and rinse your brush off again, dab it on a paper towel, and wiggle your bristles up into the base of that mountain, and you'll be able to soften that area like you see me doing here. The trick is you'll need to continuously go back and dab your paper towel. You can also mist your paper at this point, which is what I've done here, and that is doing two things. One, it's softening the paint even more, but it's also adding in droplets to my mountain to create lots of texture, which I'm always after. So it's up to you, play around. Not all spray or mist bottles are created equal. So you're really going to have to figure out which one's going to work for you, because the force of how the water is coming out is different in different bottles, and the amount of water that's coming out is different as well. Now, while it's still wet, I wanted to also add in some shadows. I'm not thinking about where the shadows are. I just want to drop in some paint. And so I'm doing that here, and it's just going to naturally move with that wet paint and do its magic. I wanted another mountain in front of this mountain to add a bit more layers and a bit more depth to my painting, but I wanted it to be very faded and soft and be almost taken over by the mist. So in order to get the lightest wash, if you're new to watercolor, all you need to do is have way more water and very light amount of pigment on your brush. And I decided as an impulse to add a bear. Now I've only sketched in the top part of the bear, not a full bear, because the base or the feet of the bear, I'm going to smooth that out as if there's mist around the animal. I am not someone who draws. I think it requires a different set of skills, and I'm not in practice. Now, anyone can learn to draw, firm believer in that, but it does require a different set, I think, from my experience, a different set of techniques and skills when it comes to drawing. Now, I am using a very light wash for this bear, and I think if I left it like this, it would have looked really good. I, in my opinion, think that bear looks like a bear, but I keep messing with it, and then it kind of ends up looking like a rhino. I don't know. It was weird, but it's fine. I'm still happy with it. I think the top part looks like a bear. It's just the head that is a bit strange to me. But again, I think if I continued to painting these little bear silhouettes, they would improve for sure. But anyway, I did want to add a bear. Now I'm adding in some darker grasses, and I do that just throughout the whole painting, just building up some layers, building up some texture, just to add a bit more. When you have such a simplistic landscape like this, where it's a bit more just two tones, it's nice to have some dimension, either in your foreground or your background, or just, somewhere. Now, using bleed proof white for the snow. If you haven't seen my previous video, go ahead and check it out. I use the bleed proof white for snow. So if you want to see another wintry landscape, be sure to check that video out. Now I'm using a deerfoot brush. If anyone knows, leave me a comment below. I would love to know if there is a fully synthetic brush like this. I can't seem to find one. It's usually 50-50. I thought this was fully synthetic, but now that I've gone back, I think it is part synthetic, part animal hair, but I prefer synthetic brushes. So let me know if anyone has any idea of where I can find this type of brush that's fully synthetic. Now I'm adding in some more bleed-proof white to get some texture on my rocks, and I'm adding in some of the frozen grasses. I love adding white highlights, using bleed-proof white. I don't know if it's quite something you do in watercolor, but I love it personally. And of course, adding in more richness, more depth by more shadows, because I love contrast in my style, in my paintings. It is just something that really speaks to me, so I really love the darkness and the richness. I lost the bear a little bit with that bleed-proof white, so I'm bringing that back and just making the bear a bit darker at the top and then fading it out at the bottom. And of course, be sure to like and subscribe and stick around if you haven't already. I'd love to connect with you, to see your paintings. Be sure to visit me on my other social media platforms. I'm at Jackie Peacock Art on Instagram, and same with Facebook. And you're welcome to join our Painting Moodscapes group, and I'd love to see what you come up with your own paintings. All right, everyone, that's it for now. I will see you in my next video. And thank you for watching. Take care. Bye.